Hello everyone and welcome back to this edition of Ask Laura. Can barely believe it's March already, but clearly it remains busy, pressured and demanding for many teams across our system. That's reflected in some of the questions which have been submitted for today, and they cover a range of topics including culture, leadership and estates. We'll work through those with Laura shortly, but before we do, as always, Laura, good to see you. Would you like to give us a short update for colleagues on some of the key things you've been involved with lately?
Of course, good to see you as well, Stephen, and hi everyone. So I think it's fair to say the busy start to the year has most certainly continued. People ask me about the things I'm involved in at the moment. So maybe just if I give 5 or 6 examples of a flavour of a day in the life of Laura as Chief Exec. So firstly, I want to make sure we finish the year as strongly as we can. So hopefully, as colleagues know now, we are on track to deliver the £62 million savings requirement for the year and come in under the 45 million maximum deficit position, which is a significant step forward and thanks to the hard work of colleagues across the entire organisation. Notwithstanding the challenges again of central decontamination unit shutdown in recent months, we continue to make good progress in terms of planned care and deliver against the trajectories we've agreed with Scottish Government and reduce our longest wait patients. So again, moving in the right direction there. And unscheduled care remains a continued focus. So really concerted effort to deliver more timely care so we can all begin to see the improvements we want to see for our patients and the communities we serve. Moving on, over the last 2 to 4 weeks, we've done some brilliant engagement sessions with our staff, our partners and communities and, of course, patients as we look to set the priorities for the year ahead for 26-27. And we're just in the process of finalising those so they can come through to our board for approval mid-March. So just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you to every member of staff who's taken the opportunity to have their say. That genuinely, comments that we've received have genuinely helped to shape the priorities that you'll see in the weeks to come. And as I've communicated in the last few days, last week with our board chair and director of finance, I, on behalf of the organisation, attended the Public Audit Committee to give evidence on behalf of the organisation in response to the Section 22 audit report. For me, it was an opportunity to represent the all 18,000 staff who work in the organisation, do that as best I could, and then share our improvement journey. We've got a strong story to tell. I know we have some distance to go, but equally with that, it's really important that I and we are held to account, and that's one of the many ways in which we do that. Setting the financial plan for the year ahead, we've taken a really much more integrated approach by working with all of our system partners, including our local authority colleagues and integration joint boards, to join up our planning for 26-27. So I think we've made some really good strides there, and that serves us well in terms of having that system visibility of the financial challenges we face as we all reach that budget setting and approval stage, which is where we are now. And then finally, I'm in the process of doing all of my year-end appraisals with my line reports this month. I've done 4 or 5 over the last week alone, and then I'll turn my attention to setting personal objectives and personal development plans for my colleagues over the next month. And I have my own appraisal with my line managers and my board chair on Friday of this week. So just a real opportunity for me to remind colleagues of the importance of everyone having an annual appraisal. Hugely important that as line managers we take the time to share and discuss with colleagues how the last year has been, discuss personal development opportunities and personal development plans, but also to set clear objectives for the year ahead. And as I say, I would encourage everyone to make sure that appraisal dates are in the diaries for those who have line management responsibilities. Thanks, Stephen.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Our first question comes from Samantha Mayer. Samantha described attending Royal Aberdeen Children's Hospital recently and struggling to find a parking space at the far end of the site, particularly while attending with a child. She asks whether there are any plans to increase parking provision at that end of the site.
Thanks for the question, Samantha. I think it's fair to say in recent months we've certainly seen an increase in terms of car parking related questions, and this month is no exception. So firstly, I'm sorry to hear that it's so difficult to park, especially with a child, and we know the parking pressures at the end of the site have been significant, really compounded principally because of the amount of construction and redevelopment work that is happening in that part of the site, which has reduced capacity somewhat, which has put pressures on the site in all sorts of ways. And I know it causes frustrations and leads to additional stresses that none of us need, and huge inconvenience. And I don't underestimate that in any way. We know parking was considered as part of the bed and anchor development, and we do continue to look at what we can do to improve capacity and access car parking wise as part of our overall estates planning work. So please know we look at that. That said, we hope to start beginning to increase car parking provision again as we look at the projects coming to a conclusion. And we know we've got some kind of end dates for those really key developments over the next 6 to 12 months or so. So we're hoping as we move out of the peak of the construction work, more of that capacity will start to come online, which can only be a positive thing for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, our next question comes from Glenn Erskine, who is a bank and semi-retired nurse. Glenn asks whether Laura stands by her commitment to openness and honesty with staff, and whether she believes she has achieved that so far.
Again, thanks for the question, Glenn. So yes, I absolutely stand by this commitment to openness, honesty and transparency. Hugely important to me as a leader and a chief exec, and it's absolutely core to my own personal values. That said, I'm human like everyone else, and I appreciate I don't get things right all of the time. And when I don't, I try to put my hands up, own up to it, and basically be really honest about what I've learned and what I could have perhaps done differently. So please know I do that reflection piece all the time. There's perhaps not many days that I don't do a bit of that self-reflection in terms of my own decision making. I also recognise that not everyone will agree with the decisions either I or we are making, but actually where that is the case, I'll always be open and honest around why certain decisions have been necessary and how we've come to those decision points. In terms of my own communication, I've tried to be open, I think, in the way I communicate with staff in a number of ways since I've joined the organisation. So sessions such as this, my all staff briefing sessions, which are open to anyone and anyone can ask any question, both on the day or anonymously in advance, and through other ways of keeping in touch, such as my visits, both at ARI, at Dr. Gray's and in the community in different settings, but also through my monthly blogs as well. So trying to do lots of different ways of keeping in touch with staff. But again, what I would ask Steve and Glenn is if you've got any specific feedback for me, if you'd like me to do things differently, do more or less of certain things, I'm always receptive to that feedback and different ideas for what I might do moving forward. So please do get in touch with me directly, and I'd really welcome that.
Okay. Our next question comes from Jeanette Taylor, who's in the diabetes team. Jeanette highlights the ongoing lift reliability issues at Royal Albert Children's Hospital, how frequently they are out of order, and it underlines the impact on families and wheelchair users that this has. Jeanette asks whether there are long-term plans to address this that Laura might be aware of.
No, thanks, Jeanette, for the question. This is probably another frequently asked question at the moment. It certainly has been since I've been in post. And I know there are regular challenges with lifts. Don't underestimate at all the impact on patients and staff. It's hugely disruptive and hugely frustrating. I think it's fair to say we know the ARI site in particular is an ageing site and with huge infrastructure challenges. But what I would say is these particular lifts being referred to are amongst the least reliable in our entire estate from the conversations I've had over the last few days, both in terms of their age and design. And with regard to this specific lift in particular, a power surge damaged the electrical systems that control the lift motors. So that is what has caused the damaged parts, which require specialist repair. So they're not stock items, which means it's just taken a little bit longer to do those repair works that are needed. But again, I don't underestimate how disruptive this is for everybody. So the replacement planning is well underway. We expect this to take 12 weeks. And I've also just did a little bit of research ahead of this call, speaking to my estates and facilities colleagues who inform me reliably that we have 122 lifts across NHS Grampian, and capital replacement, of course, is prioritised annually. And these two particular lifts in the Children's Hospital are part of this programme. So I hope this offers assurance in terms of the repair and planning work, but also that kind of replacement work that is underway linked to our capital programme.
Perfect. Okay, our next question comes from Michelle Rothney, who works in orthopaedics. Michelle describes an incident in the Lady Helen car park during which an unattended car rolled back and damaged her vehicle. Michelle goes on to say she found it really hard to know who to contact and had to try both the logistics building and security. Before it was explained there is a different process in hours and out of hours. Michelle mentions this lack of clarity added to an already difficult situation and asks whether this process can be clarified.
Oh, thanks for the question, Michelle. And firstly, I'm just really sorry to hear this has happened. It must have been a really frightening experience for you, but also with that it wasn't then clear where you should go for help and support at the time, which I'm sure only added further to the stress that you were experiencing on the day itself. I've checked with the team since, and between 6:30 a.m. and 3 p.m. Where there are any incidents such as this, people should go to the dedicated car parking team. And then after 3 p.m, it's our security team as the main point of contact. But what this has really highlighted to me, Michelle, is that we do need to communicate this much more widely. So I will work with my colleagues in our communications team to do that, but also ask that we look at signage, because I think we could maybe do the all staff communications, patient comms as well, and look at signage as well in that regard to cover all bases there. And then finally, there's a new staff car parking registration database that is coming into effect soon, which will help us to improve the oversight of parking, which I think can only be welcomed. So this will help us to identify owners much more quickly moving forward where there are instances such as this.
Okay, so our final question reflects on workload and culture. An anonymous colleague notes that many staff work beyond their contracted hours. Meetings often fill diaries and expectations around availability can feel constant. They suggest protected no meeting time, perhaps over lunch hours, clearer boundaries around availability, and even gestures like birthday leave to show well-being matters. They ask what is being done to shift culture towards something more sustainable.
Now, again, thank you for the question. So I recognise many staff work well beyond their contracted hours. And first of all, just want to say thank you and recognise that, but also set out very clearly that is by no means an expectation from certainly my perspective. I think we can't talk about the importance of staff health and wellbeing and staff health and wellbeing being a priority, but then actually not evidencing that we're prioritising this in reality and day to day. And I think we have some way to go in this space, Stephen, as you and I talk about regularly. I'm pleased we now have our new culture programme board, and staff health and wellbeing is front and centre of that work moving forward, and will come out as part of the 26-27 priorities as a really high priority. So more to follow in that in the weeks to come. But we do have somewhere to go here, I think it's fair to say. I think there's a range of things teams can do in this space. Some teams do use that no meeting time very successfully. I think we do need to be clearer on meetings generally. There's so many of them, but be clear on the purpose and time those meetings need to take, and have more discipline and rigour around that, but also have more realistic expectations in terms of when we're asking for information or sending emails, what is reasonable in terms of those response times. What I wouldn't want to do, Stephen, is be prescriptive with the entire organisations around what should be happening in this space. I would like local teams and local leaders and managers to really own this and work with their teams. And really, there's a number of options. I've set out 2 or 3 of those things just a few moments ago. But actually, I'd like local teams to really own this moving forward, and I think that's entirely appropriate. In terms of the birthday leave suggestion, I think I agree with the spirit and sentiment of that suggestion, but I think on the flip side, the reality is leave entitlements are really nationally negotiated, as you know all too well, Stephen, and so we don't have the flexibility to change things locally. But what I would ask our culture board to do, with support of our staff, and our staff networks are hugely important in this space, is to think through what we could do within the parameters in which we can operate as part of that wider work, to really strengthen the work we're doing to support staff and health and wellbeing in the organisation, which is a top priority.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Yes, yeah, I'm very aware of the sort of terms and conditions aspect of it, and equally, I recall in the early days of the pandemic, we did try organisationally to have no meetings taking place at lunchtimes. Equally, I recognise from the question that's been submitted, there are all too many meetings that take place around about lunchtime where colleagues will join the meeting and keep their camera off because they're eating. So again, I guess as a reminder that the virtual background I've got at your best with the rest is going to be more than just a slogan. It's actually going to be how we do our work. So yeah, a good question about culture and wellbeing.
And also, I completely agree, and it is, best with rest is an ideal reminder for this question. So thank you for signposting us there. I also think it's about when we have a lot of long meetings, but one, do they need to be that length in the first place? But two, having the discipline, and you're brilliant at reminding us of this, Stephen. Every hour having a break for 10 minutes so we can get up and about and having a bit of a break. So I think lots of little things like that can make the world of difference for all of us.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you to everyone who submitted a question. If you'd like to raise something for a future session, please email gram.communications@nhs.scot and indicate if you'd prefer it to be asked anonymously. We'll be back next month with another session. Thank you.